At the southern tip of Spain, where the continent of Europe reaches out toward Africa, there rises a single massive limestone rock towering 1,300 feet straight up out of the sea. It is barely 3 miles long. You could walk its length in an afternoon. And yet this one small rock has been one of the most fought over, most strategically vital pieces of land on the entire planet for thousands of years. Because the Rock of Gibraltar stands guard over one of the most important places on Earth, the narrow strait, only about 8 miles wide at its narrowest, that is the sole gateway between the Atlantic Ocean and the Mediterranean Sea. Whoever holds Gibraltar holds the key to that gateway, the choke point through which the trade, the navies, and the fortunes of empires must pass. For this reason, the rock has been coveted, conquered, besieged, and defended by Phoenicians, Romans, Moors, Spaniards, and the British, who hold it still, and around it have swirled some of the most dramatic sieges and battles in history. Today, we are going to tell the story of this extraordinary rock, how a tiny outcrop of limestone became one of the most strategically important and bitterly contested places on Earth. Using advanced AI trained on the archaeology and history of Gibraltar, the records of the empires that fought over it, the accounts of its famous sieges, and the work of historians, we have reconstructed the long and dramatic story of the rock. It begins long before any empire, in the very deep past of the human story itself. The Rock of Gibraltar is staggeringly ancient as a place of human and pre-human importance. The caves that honeycomb the limestone were inhabited by Neanderthals, our ancient human cousins, in the deep prehistoric past. In fact, Gibraltar is one of the most important Neanderthal sites in the world. Some evidence suggests that the caves of the rock may have been among the very last places on Earth where Neanderthals survived, a final refuge for that ancient human species at the southern edge of Europe before they vanished forever. One of the earliest Neanderthal skulls ever discovered was found here, though its significance was not understood until later. So before it was ever a fortress of empires, the rock was a home and a last refuge for an entire branch of humanity, tens of thousands of years ago. In the ancient world, the rock was wrapped in myth and legend. To the ancient Greeks and other Mediterranean peoples, this was the very edge of the known world. The Rock of Gibraltar and a corresponding height across the Strait in Africa were known as the Pillars of Hercules, said to have been set there by the hero Hercules himself to mark the limit of the world. Beyond them lay the great unknown ocean and the edge of everything. The Phoenicians, those great seafaring traders of the ancient Mediterranean, knew these waters well and revered the Strait. The Carthaginians and then the Romans controlled the region in their turn, the Romans incorporating it into their vast Mediterranean empire. But for all its mythic significance, the rock itself was not yet the mighty fortress it would become. That transformation would come with a new power that swept across the strait from the south and changed the history of the entire region. In the early 8th century AD, the rock entered history in earnest, and it even took its modern name from this moment. A Muslim army from North Africa, in the great wave of Islamic expansion, crossed the strait to invade the Iberian Peninsula, the lands that are now Spain and Portugal. The commander of this invasion was a general named Tariq, and the rock that guarded the crossing point came to be named after him. The Arabic name, meaning the Mountain of Tariq, was gradually transformed over the centuries into the name we use today, Gibraltar. The invasion succeeded spectacularly. Muslim forces conquered most of the Iberian Peninsula and ruled large parts of it for centuries, creating one of the most brilliant and sophisticated civilizations of the medieval world. Gibraltar, the gateway through which the invasion had come, became a fortified Moorish stronghold. The Moors built a castle on the rock, parts of which still stand today, and fortified the position, recognizing, as everyone who ever held it recognized, its immense strategic value. For centuries, as the Christian kingdoms of the north slowly fought to reconquer the peninsula in the long struggle known as the Reconquista, Gibraltar remained a contested fortress, changing hands and enduring sieges. Eventually, the Christian kingdom of Spain took the rock and held it, and Gibraltar became Spanish. For a couple of centuries, the rock was a Spanish fortress town, guarding the strait for the Spanish crown, which by then ruled a global empire stretching across the Americas and beyond. But the strategic prize that was Gibraltar was about to draw the attention of a rising new naval power, and the rock was about to change hands once more in the change that has defined it ever since. In the early 18th century, during a great European war over the succession to the Spanish throne, a combined English and Dutch fleet captured Gibraltar from Spain. When the war ended, the treaty that settled it handed Gibraltar to Britain, and British it has remained from that day to this. For the rising British Empire, with its growing navy and its global ambitions, Gibraltar was a prize of incalculable value, a fortress controlling the gateway to the Mediterranean, a naval base from which British sea power could dominate the Strait and project force into the inland sea. The rock became a cornerstone of British naval strategy and would remain so for centuries. But Spain never accepted the loss of the rock, and Gibraltar became the site of some of the most famous and dramatic sieges in all of military history. Again and again, Spain, sometimes allied with France, tried to take Gibraltar back by force, subjecting the rock to long and brutal sieges. The most famous of all was the Great Siege, which lasted for nearly 4 years in the late 18th century, one of the longest sieges in British military history. For nearly 4 years, a small British and Allied garrison on the rock held out against the combined might of Spain and France, enduring relentless bombardment, blockade, hunger, and disease, cut off and besieged, while the enemy threw everything they had at the fortress. During this epic defense, the defenders carved a remarkable system of tunnels and gun galleries directly into the living rock of Gibraltar, hollowing out the limestone to create defensive positions and to mount cannon in places the enemy could not reach, an extraordinary feat of military engineering that began the vast network of tunnels that would eventually riddle the entire rock. Against all odds, the garrison held. The Great Siege failed. Gibraltar remained British, its reputation as an impregnable fortress now cemented in legend. The phrase "solid as the Rock of Gibraltar" entered the language as a byword for steadfast, unshakable strength. In the centuries that followed, Gibraltar's strategic importance only grew. The rock became one of the most important naval bases in the entire British Empire, a vital link in the chain of bases that allowed the Royal Navy to rule the seas and to connect Britain to its empire in the Mediterranean, in the Middle East, in India, and beyond. When a great canal was later cut through Egypt, creating a new sea route to the east, Gibraltar's importance as the western gateway to the Mediterranean became greater still, the first link in the chain of bases that guarded the route to India and the Far East. In the great wars of the 20th century, Gibraltar was a crucial Allied stronghold. During the Second World War, the rock was transformed into a vast fortress. The network of tunnels was expanded enormously into a hidden city inside the mountain, with miles of underground passages, storerooms, barracks, a hospital, and command centers capable of sheltering the entire garrison and supplies. The rock served as a critical naval and air base, controlling the western Mediterranean and serving as a launching point for major Allied operations. The civilian population was largely evacuated for their safety, leaving the rock a pure fortress. And Gibraltar has one more famous and charming feature, found nowhere else in Europe. On the upper slopes of the rock live the only wild monkeys in all of Europe, a population of tailless monkeys called Barbary macaques. No one is entirely certain how they first came to Gibraltar, whether brought by the Moors or by later peoples, or whether they are the last remnant of populations that once lived more widely in the region. But they have become the beloved symbol of the rock, and a famous legend holds that as long as the monkeys remain on Gibraltar, the rock will remain British, a superstition reportedly taken seriously enough that, during the Second World War, when the monkey population fell dangerously low, an order was given to replenish their numbers to keep the legend and the garrison's morale intact. Today, the monkeys delight the tourists who come from all over the world to ride up the rock and gaze out across the strait toward Africa, just a few miles away across the shimmering water. That was the history of Gibraltar, the rock that controlled the world's gateway. A single massive outcrop of limestone at the meeting point of 2 continents and 2 seas, a last refuge of the Neanderthals, the mythic pillar of Hercules at the edge of the ancient world, the rock named for the Muslim general whose invasion crossed beneath it, a Moorish and then Spanish and then British fortress, the site of one of the longest and most heroic sieges in military history, the impregnable cornerstone of British sea power, riddled with miles of tunnels carved into its heart, and home to the only wild monkeys in Europe. Few places so small have mattered so much for so long. Its ownership remains, even today, a matter of dispute between Britain and Spain, the latest chapter in a contest over this rock that has been running for more than 1,000 years. And it endures because of a simple, unchanging fact of geography. Whoever holds the Rock of Gibraltar holds the key to the gateway between the ocean and the sea, the choke point through which the fortunes of empires have always had to pass, solid and immovable as it has stood since long before the first human being ever gazed up at its towering cliffs.